So, Taya, you're originally from Norway, but somehow now you're in Oregon.
Yeah.
How did you end up? Where's the connection? How did you end up in Oregon?
Oh, so it's kind of a complicated story. So
Mm.
technically, or the essence of that story is that I met my husband in Norway, and he is American. But when I was little, I with my family, so I'm Norwegian, born to Norwegian parents, born in Norway. But when I was about 3 months old, we moved to the US. And so I lived in the US until I was about 9. And then we moved back to Norway. I happened upon an American and we got together and then decided to move uh, to Oregon, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, that's synchronistic. That's like America was calling you and pulling you.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Part of the attraction, I think, was that he was American. I feel like
Really? Wait, what part of America did you live in for about 9 years?
I lived in Maryland mainly, so the
Okay.
other coast, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. And he was from Oregon?
No. So he was actually from New York and then also Florida, so he was also
Yeah.
from that side, and then
Yeah.
we just kinda happened to decide on Oregon just for the energy of it, just
Yeah.
being very attracted to this
Yeah.
area.
Nice. Yeah, Oregon's its own energy. I love the Pacific Northwest, like Washington, Oregon, California, but Oregon is its own little bubble. I just went for the first time last September, of course, the cliche Cannon Beach, and just drove
Yes.
around all the coast. And wow, just hiking in the fog with all the
Mhm.
moss covered forest. You are just in another world above the clouds.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. I usually think of it as like a milder version of Norway a little bit, just the
Yeah.
weather and all of that.
Yeah.
So
Wow. And so I can totally see how you would write a book as incredible as Animal Intuition in a place. Did you write the book in Oregon or did you go
I did.
somewhere?
No, I wrote it here.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's and your husband's name's John, right?
Yes. How did
Look
you
at
know?
me doing my homework because I'm a Scorpio moon. I stalk you for a little bit.
I see. I was like, where
No,
did I put that up?
one of my as a writer myself, one of my favorite parts is to read the acknowledgments at the end to see
Oh,
the tribe, the community that helped you create such a beautiful work of art. And I saw that your husband was last, and I see that he's a scientist.
so yeah, he teaches microbiology.
Yeah.
He was the scientist when I met him in Norway. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting mix
Yeah.
between us.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And what was so cute is you have two little ones, right?
Yes.
Now, is my Scorpio creeping you out now? Here's your address. I found your social security number. But no, it was so sweet how in the end of the book you said that one of your children wants to be an animal communicator and the other one
Yes.
wants to be a scientist.
Yeah, it's been funny because they're still in grade school. And so obviously, teachers ask them what their parents do and all of that. And I think they've just their teachers have been a little bit sort of confused about what I do because my kids will just say that I talk to animals, and
Nice, honey. Okay, go home. Send your mom here.
yeah.
She rubs a crystal ball and talks to our cat.
Yep.
Right, right. Oh, that's so beautiful, though. I love blending science and spirituality. One of my good friends, Kevin Carden, he hosts the podcast called Science and Spirituality, where it's just blending the
Mm,
two. And I totally resonate with that. And I often say on this show, feet on the ground, head in the stars. Have a good blend of both. Don't be all or one in the other because you're missing out on a lot of life and the energies of it all. And
absolutely.
so, what we're going to talk about is your book, Animal Intuition. Literally one of the most beautiful books. I will say that with confidence because I love the moon phases at the bottom, all the different animals around the middle of it. It's so symbolic, the cover to me. I could stare at it and interpret it in so many different ways. So, kudos to you and the publishing team on that. You guys
Yes.
really did a good job.
Thank
But
you.
it's a book about communicating with pets, animal spirits, and all of the energies of the natural world, which myself included, and a lot of our listeners are going to just feel like this podcast is a breath of fresh air because they too have felt that. How many people when their kids talk to their pets and or their stuffed animals and genuinely feel like I used to play school with my stuffed animals and have them do tests. I think I literally had a chalkboard and I had a whole like visual world with my stuffed lion and my monkey and all of them.
Yes.
They would talk to me. And as we grow up, the world just conditions us to turn that side of ourselves off and we lose it. But I've always kind of felt isolated in how I feel towards animals because still at 34 years old, I can they talk to me. I hear them and I'm like, am I losing it? Like I genuinely talk to my dog and I give him a species appropriate diet because he tells me it's good for him. And people are like, you are just too enmeshed with your dog. Let it go. Like when we travel so much, I look at Rover, the app for pet sitters, and I will literally show my dog and ask him like this person, and nope, nope. And we'll go visit some and he'll immediately tell me like, don't you leave me with this person. And then others, he's like, see ya, I'm going to hang out with them. So I'm like, okay, that's good. Do you think I'm crazy, Taya?
No, absolutely not. And I think it's so funny because different animals will have, different ways of communicating or how talkative they are too. Some are very talkative and
Yeah.
others are not so much. And one of my cats actually, I'm laughing because I kind of recognize a lot of things here. One of my cats just the other day, she's so talkative but especially about food. Generally, that's one of her main interests in life. And so she was so adamant about getting a message across to me that she started to infiltrate some of my dreams actually at night. So I was dreaming that there was a baby in my dream telling me that she didn't want milk, she didn't want her normal food, she wanted the canned fish. And in my dream, I was like, yeah, that's definitely Gilly trying to get a message across.
Yeah, Gilly is your cat, right? I wrote, you have two kids and two cats. Nutmeg the guinea pig, too.
Yes. Yes. And we recently added a hamster. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that is so cool. Yeah, animals do. And I never lost that ability. I don't know what it is in me, but I just never was able to turn that off. Of course, it could be trauma bonded. I had a pretty rough childhood, and animals, especially cats, were my safe space because their energies were so predictable and calm that I never
yes.
got. So I would gravitate to them. But I remember in college, it was my sophomore year, and I was in an environmental science class, and she put on a documentary. It was Food Inc., that really
Mm-hmm.
popular one, and it started to show you like how our food is made and how our animal welfare. And I got nauseated, my face went pale, my fingertips turned cold, and I was like, such a physical response. I just stood up, found my way to the back of the classroom because it was dark, and went to the restroom and just splashed water and just bawled and bawled and bawled. And I was vegan for like 6 or 7 years after that.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, the animals were talking to me through the TV. And maybe it was being naive, but I was like, wait, this actually happens in the world. People actually treat animals like this.
I had a similar experience actually. Yeah. And
Did you?
yeah. I sort of so this is a while ago, but I randomly, and this is way before I started anything with animal communication. But yeah, I kind of randomly happened upon the term of vegan. I tried a vegan recipe, done not knowing what veganism was, and then after that researched, and then also saw Food Inc. or other documentaries, and obviously, being very sensitive to energy and all of that too. You feel that suffering, and it's so
Yep.
shocking too, because most of us we're not aware of it in our day-to-day life of that happening. And yeah, I also felt really I got physically ill after that, and also explored veganism for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, a lot of the listeners know I eventually got a hormonal issue and adrenal fatigue. And so my body started to crave steak and eggs. And I would mentally tell myself, like, no, that animal is not suffering. And if I tell myself, I'm such a hypocrite, if you wouldn't go out and hunt and kill it and slaughter it, then you shouldn't be eating it. But I had to reintroduce animal products. And now before I eat meat or eggs, I try and say a prayer.
Hmm. Mhm.
Maybe it sounds hypocritical, but I try and just thank the animal. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you so much. I understand these are just the laws of the universe and there's going to be suffering. There's going to be this, but thank you for giving me life and vitality. And I promise to use that to better this world.
Yeah, yeah, I very much relate because I also was having a lot of health issues and sort of ironically am very sensitive or allergic to a lot of plant-based foods, especially the ones that replace meat. And so unfortunately, it's one of these balancing acts of trying
Yeah.
to take care of ourselves as well as make the right
Yeah.
choice and all that. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, the sensitivities to animals, my gosh. My friends joke and say my eyes are constipated because I don't cry over like weddings or babies or anything human related. But boy, if I see the wrong Instagram post or the wrong
Mm.
billboard of like dirty dogs in a puppy mill, just and so I've been like teasing on my Instagram, like I'm gonna try not to cry. I'm gonna try not to cry. It's something in my heart with these animals. Have you felt that? Is that why
Oh.
you got into this?
Yeah, I've always been very drawn to animals. Always been obviously an animal lover as well.
Yeah.
It was actually more so I've always been very interested in anything to do with the intuitive arts generally, anything to do with anything within the world of woo. And I was always very free to explore it. I initially actually was more drawn to the mediumship world, so connecting to human past loved ones and all of that. And from there, I started to explore animal communication,
So
and it felt so natural to me, and it really lit me up in a way that nothing else has.
yeah, it's so interesting. Do you think everyone kind of has the ability to be psychic or to be intuitive, but it's just a matter of who escaped the rabbit hole of not losing it to society's conditioning and who just fell down and lost it?
Absolutely. I think as if you have a soul, then you can connect. And I think of animal communication or even psychic work or mediumship. It's a soul to soul connection often, or your energy connecting to a different energy. And so if you have a soul, then I absolutely think that it's something that's very natural for everybody to be able to do because it's part of our essence. But yeah, I think it very much has a lot to do with conditioning, and being able to quiet certain parts of the brain down so that we can actually hear and listen to that subtle energy from others.
Yeah. And one thing I love about your book is how you explain so beautifully that a lot of people imagine being psychic or talking to animals involves literal English communication, like, but it's not. It's images and it's feelings. Like if I look at my pug and I'm like, "How are you feeling?" and all of a sudden my arm starts to itch, I'm like, "Oh, we got a tick bite. Do we have need our allergy shot?" What is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It comes through as all kinds of impressions, yeah,
Yeah.
not just the words. I think many people think I'm like Dr. Doolittle, that I just hear the animal talking out loud or that.
They all have accents and different voices.
Yes, yes. I mean, so I also want to make sure that I don't purport to speak for all animal communicators. For some do have that experience where it is very much more just sentences versus other
Yeah.
impressions that they're getting. But generally, when we're communicating with an animal or they're communicating with us, they're sending the energy of what they're trying to communicate, and then that is then translated into those various internal sensory impressions. So
Mhm.
feelings in the body,
Yeah.
emotions, images in our mind's eye, words in our head, and so on.
Yeah. And those are all the clairs. I call them clairsentience, clairaudience,
Yes.
clairvoyance. And there's a whole, it's right about in the middle of your book. You break down what all the clairs mean, which is a frequent question we get for the podcast is which one am I? Which one do I have? And your book, it is focused on communicating with animal spirits and your pets, but it's all around a really good handbook for tapping into your intuition and your psychic abilities. You did such a good job. And it's a pretty lengthy book. It's hard, guys, to write a book, period. Like the most difficult part, would you agree, of publishing a book is starting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was
And then once you
lucky. I was a little bit lucky because I've taught a lot of animal communication. So I already had some things written.
Mhm,
But if I
mhm.
hadn't, I would have felt very, very
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
The self-discipline that it takes to finish a book. It
Mm.
is not easy. It sounds easy, but boy, it's not. Only an Aries like you. 0-degree Aries sun. Aries is a
Yeah.
new sign for you to learn. Could have that self-discipline and that drive. So share with us, what is the rest of your big three?
So Aries sun, Virgo moon, and then Scorpio rising.
Saucy. You guys, if I ever had the luxury of looking at birth charts before I invest in an intuitive session or a therapy session, Scorpio rising is the one that I am looking for.
Really?
Oh, yes. Scorpio rising. The rising sign is the energy you're moving into. This is actually the sun sign past age 30. So you may be an Aries, but you're actually a Scorpio now.
Mhm.
And a Scorpio rising is normally someone who alchemizes. They alchemize their pain into medicine, the pain that they've been through, the trauma they've been through into their purpose. And it often becomes extremely psychic in nature because a lot of Scorpio risings, and you can agree or disagree, have been through a lot of trauma in their life. They have been broken down. They have seen the nasty side of humans. And so they have a choice. They can either turn that into a hatred for the world and crawl into their shell and never talk or interact, or they turn it into being a psychic, a shaman, intuitive, and really help people get through some dark feelings, like grieving the loss of an animal.
Yes.
You're gifted. And then the Virgo moon, I was just telling Taya before the recording, Virgo rules pets and animals. So her heart, her moon is connected to the animals. She was made for this. It's written in her stars. It's fascinating. You know what? What encouraged you to take your readings and put them in a tangible book?
So that was a it's gonna sound a little odd. It was kind of random
Nothing's odd
actually.
here in the lounge.
So I actually never wanted to write a book, and it had come up as a few thoughts here and there, maybe I'll write a book, and then immediately shot it down myself, just because I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a lot. It would involve, I was definitely not interested in self-publishing. I knew it would involve finding an agent and then finding a publisher as well as writing the book and so on. And it just wasn't something I was interested in. I do love to get readings myself from other practitioners. And so a couple of years ago, I got a reading from two different psychics, one actually being an astrologer as well. And both of them said they saw me writing a book on animal communication. And during the reading, I've seen many do this in my own readings as well. I just kind of was like nodded and smiled and also just completely shot it down in my own head and was like, it's not happening. Sorry. And I was thinking, it would literally have to fall into my lap if that was going to happen because I was not going to go out and find that opportunity. And then a few months after that last reading, an editor who worked with a publisher emailed me and asked me if I ever would want to write a book on animal communication.
Oh my gosh. I'm surprised, but not. That's so
Sure.
airy. Like, fuck it. I'm not doing it. They have to come to me. It's amazing. And the nodes of destiny, the north and south node, they are moving into the Aries Libra axis. And so anyone with Aries and Libra in their big three, sun, moon, and rising, they're getting a big change, a big eclipse in their life,
Mm,
push towards
mhm,
monumental things. So the fact that your book is coming out during
mhm.
that is like, your sun sign, your vitality, your individuality, and who you are is about to change. Because I really hope and push good luck towards this book doing phenomenal and putting you on the map because so many people love their animals. So many people need help with grief around their
Absolutely.
pets.
Mhm.
That is probably what we'll spend a lot of this episode talking about, because I know there's a lot of listeners who have experienced the death of a soul dog, a soul cat, and there's no support. There's just American culture that says your cat died. Okay, get to work. But it's like, wait, sometimes this pain is deeper than losing a parent or a child, and nobody accepts that. They call you too sensitive. They look at you like, you lost your cat. I'm sorry. Like, come back to work. What's the matter? And so I will, everyone here knows this, knowingly admit that I have a pug. He is my soul pug. I have wanted a pug my whole life since I saw that movie. I don't know. Pugs were always just my thing. And I wished upon a star. I manifested. I was going to Petco and buying leashes and water bowls before I even knew I'd get one, preparing myself for this pug. And I got him. And we have the same birthday. And his name's Jeff, and I'm Steph. And he's 6 years old. And I often, with my Scorpio moon, think, what am I going to do when he's dead? What,
Mhm.
how, I see my future often. I'm very goal oriented and excited about a lot of things. But when I think about the moment, oh, here comes the tears. When I think about the moment he is not earthside, I don't see anything past that. And I'm like, okay, therapist, we need to talk about this. But I mean, have you seen that? I imagine a lot of your readings are based around grief.
Absolutely. And grief can be grief, kind of like what you're describing. It's sort of grief that's sneaking up on you before you've even lost your animal. And as well as obviously the grief that comes upon us after we lose our animals as well. And I think you're right when you say that it's kind of a unique experience of losing an animal, in that there is so little support around us often. We kind of feel silly about grieving our animals. But it's also, our animals are there pretty much all the time. Like anytime you're home, they're right next to you, so they're often the ones that we're spending maybe the most time with. And they're also the ones that maybe we feel the most comfortable with being around. And it is a little bit similar as having a child that can't speak. You're often making a lot of guesses about what's going on for them, and trying to make the right choices for them without really knowing, are you doing the right thing? And I think that especially as people are trying to navigate taking care of their health, especially aging animals, or those that we know are close to dying, it's often a very heartbreaking process of trying to do the best by them, as well as having to make really, really hard choices for them as
Yeah.
well. That and also trying to be, not and trying to make what's the choices that are right for them versus for us. We really just want to keep them around forever.
Mm.
And it's such a hard journey really of caretaking.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that goes into that. And with all the feelings of sadness and grief, it's really sprinkled throughout all of that.
You know what's wild is Jeffrey, my pug, was just outside with my mom because I was like, keep him out there. He snores when I'm recording. I can't have that during an interview. As soon as I mentioned him, he just opened the office door and he's sitting right below me. It's like he knew, like he could feel, and my tears about him started to come up. So he was like, this chick, let me go show her I'm present, I'm alive, relax, enjoy me while you have me. Oh, this is my first dog too. I grew up with a single mom and I never had a father figure ever in my life. And so my mom, wise, was like, hey, I got 2 kids, no help. We're not getting a dog. I can't handle that.
Yeah.
And so I was always like, well, when I'm older, I'll get one. And boy, did I ever. The most needy pug in the land. And he is a handful. And so I just he's my child. I don't have any children yet. And I genuinely, I mean, I've done this with all of my animals. They're my children, like you said. And sometimes I think he is the ultimate preparation for when I do step into motherhood. I think after him, I'll find motherhood easier because at least kids can talk. Elbow hurts. Ow. With the dog, you're like, is it fleas? Is it, do you have a tumor on your elbow? What is it? It's so tough. And so that's why I feel like your book is so detrimentally important, because you can learn to tap into your animal's energy and they will speak to you. They're actually anxious too, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I ever do a session with an animal or somebody else's animals, I always ask for permission from them if it's all right to communicate, if they'd be open to it. And I pretty much never get a no, most animals are very, very excited to connect and communicate. But I also find that a lot of the time they already are communicating and connecting to their humans. And a lot of the process of learning animal communication for us humans is really becoming aware of the ways in which their animal already is connecting to them and communicating, and the ways in which they themselves are communicating with their animals already.
Yeah. Do you think animals that pass come back to you? Same soul, different body.
Some do. In my experience, it's very much up to the individual soul, kind of what they decide to do. Some do
Yeah.
decide to stick to the spirit world, whereas
Yeah.
others do decide
Yeah.
to come back to their humans.
Yeah. And there was a quote in your book that I really loved about empaths, right? We're all empaths, I believe, and that it's just a switch that either gets turned off because of a tough childhood or upbringing, or you're lucky enough to protect yourself to keep it on. But you said it, speaking with animals is like sensing how someone really feels, but not knowing what to do with it when you don't realize what's going on. It's like I sense something. I walk in a room after two people just got in a fight and I sense like, whoa, what just happened in here? But I don't know how to. And even as a child, when you sense your parents don't like each other today, I wonder what happened. I don't know what to ask or what to do. Is that a similar feeling to connecting with the animals?
Absolutely. And it certainly can be that initially, before you start to actively develop the ability to communicate with them in a conscious way. Because we already are picking up on a lot of stuff from our animals, even subconsciously. And yeah, it's about bringing it into our conscious awareness, and then from there, doing something with it.
Deciding that, yeah. I've heard that animals will sometimes absorb your own health issues. Like, for example, if you have anxiety every single day, that you'll probably give it to your dog or your cat or your pet because they are such pure creatures that they're like, well, let me kind of absorb these consequences for you. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of it and I have seen it sometimes. Although I do think sometimes we can get a little bit paranoid about it, where, a person feels like they or are worried that they gave their dog cancer or something like that because of their issues, and I
Yeah.
don't necessarily see that so much. But yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anxiety very much is something that transfers a lot. And I have seen many times a human and their animal companion, their health issues mirror each other. It could be that one absorbed from the other. I think also we tend to attract souls that are very similar to us as well. So
Mhm.
I always think it's fascinating that the human first has to learn how to deal with that health issue in their animal, and then
Yeah.
are forced to learn how to deal with it in their own bodies as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I have a story about that, but I couldn't wait to ask you real time. I feel like I'm so just lucky about your first experience. And I think a lot of people will resonate with this story of when you went to a psychic fair, I believe it was, or some convention where you were learning about it and looking at other people in the industry and you connected with someone. You got paired up with an older woman. You know what I'm asking? And you
Yes.
connected with her deceased husband.
Yes.
What was that like? Walk us through like how you got partnered up and what it felt like.
Yes. So this was in my teens. And throughout my teens, pretty much from like from whenever I could start going to these psychic fairs or metaphysical fairs, I loved to go. So throughout my whole teens, I loved to go there and, take all the little workshops and walk around the little booths and always get like a reading from someone. And this was a workshop that I went into that was focused on mediumship. So learning to connect to humans that have passed away. And we were all just randomly paired up with whoever was sitting next to us. And the workshop presenter was guiding us through a little exercise and connecting to a spirit that belonged to the partner who you were partnered with. And I remember, so this was my absolute first time doing any kind of mediumship in any
Were
which
you
way.
nervous? Were you like, what am I doing? I don't.
I probably was, because anxiety has been a thing, a theme in my life. So I'm
Virgo
sure.
moon.
Yep. Yeah. So I remember, there was no, like, we weren't supposed to ask for anybody in particular in the spirit world to connect to us. We were just going to open up to whoever wanted to step forward and connect to us for our partner. And I remember closing my eyes and, asking for one of her loved ones to connect to me. And I immediately felt this rush of energy, kind of almost like stretching me upwards or stretching my energy upwards. And in my mind's eye, I saw a figure who looked very male, very big as well. He almost looked like as big as a bear in my mind's
Yeah.
eye. And I was describing to my partner what I was seeing. So I wasn't, I was just like telling her straight what I was experiencing. And I remember asking that spirit who they were, who they were, how they were connected to my partner. And I just got this overwhelming feeling of just intense, intense love for my partner. And as I was describing this to her, tears were rolling down her face, and she said I was describing her husband, who had passed away. And it was such a beautiful feeling. That love that I could feel from him for her, it really was almost like a high, that
Yeah.
feeling.
Euphoric.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know, have you ever tried mediumship before?
Oh, mediumship has tried me.
Oh,
It
okay.
happens when I am not,
Yes.
I have to say, like, hey, no, stop. This is invasive. I don't
Oh,
want to.
yeah. Yeah. I've
Yeah,
had
I
those
think there's a
experiences.
part of you that in your book that said that happened too. Boundaries are essential, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And boundaries was definitely something I had zero boundaries when I was younger. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think I just learned what the definition of the word is 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did when she connected with you, did she pull up anyone special for you?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we really pinpointed who it was actually. Yeah, but I also at the time didn't have many important
Yeah.
people who I
Right.
knew who had passed.
You're only 18. You were very
Yeah.
young.
Yes.
I too grew up going to metaphysical fairs. My mom would just take me and I was like, this is cool. Like, and I remember getting a reading from someone who said, you're gonna have a career in spirituality. And I was 17. And I was like, I'm not gonna be a nun. I've never been baptized. I've never been to a church session. And they just laughed and were like, okay, bye, honey. I'll never forget that. It's so wild. But did you feel empowered after that? Were you like, oh, I have a gift?
I don't know if I definitely felt such, like, again, it was such a high, and I did feel like in some way I in some way this was going to be part of my life if I could help it, definitely.
And here you are.
Yes.
Fascinating. I love these stories. And I want to know who Lady C is.
Oh.
The woman from Florida. You guys, you have to read her book. It's genuinely like a really cool life story. And then she jumps into the techniques and tools of how you can use it yourself. But Lady C from Florida with all the animals in her house. What?
I
What
think
part of Florida was this?
so. The east side, so around Lauderdale.
Lauderdale.
Lauderdale,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So this is probably the experience that really pushed me in this direction of doing
Yeah.
this work with animal communication and mediumship. Even if I had always been interested in that sort of thing, it was something that really solidified it for me as like, oh, this is a thing. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. So I was around 12 and I was visiting my dad who at the time was living with a woman in Florida named Lady Christopher. Her home was just filled with rescued parrots, wolf dogs, all kinds of like animals. And what she did for a living was she would go to the Bahamas and she would lead people on these boat tours to go swim with wild dolphins and whales. And she would use animal communication to connect to the dolphins and whales to both help, successful encounters with them and she was also a psychic and medium as well. And so she would have a bunch of events at her home. She invited mediums to come over and guide meditations and that sort of thing. So for me, it was just that whole experience of staying there was just this, it just lit me up. I mean, I
That's
don't know who that wouldn't light up, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's
That's
just
like the
me, but
coolest summer camp. Is Lady C still in business? Because I would love to go on a dolphin tour with her.
she doesn't do it anymore, unfortunately.
Wow.
But yeah, I could certainly hook you up with others that I do know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And so you have just always been exposed to this world. Like it chose you, kind of.
I guess it was something I was so drawn to, and then it
Yeah.
kind of just was all sprinkled throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I was blessed also to have parents who weren't religious themselves
Mhm. Yeah.
and who just kind of let me explore what I
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we have some listeners I know who come from very religious backgrounds and they are so afraid to
Yes.
invest in a birth chart consultation.
Yes.
Because their family will just absolutely shun them for it. Like you, our upbringing sound really similar. And so I can't even imagine what it's like to say, like, my cat talked to me and have a family say, no, that was God.
Or like the devil.
Yeah, yeah. How many people think astrology and things like that are demonic? It's wild, and that's a whole other podcast. But this is really cool. Were you nervous to give your first reading professionally?
Oh my God. I was nervous to give my 100th reading.
Oh,
Nerves have
says the
never left me.
perfectionist Virgo moon. I know. I always know someone might have a little nervous system riled up when they have a Gemini moon or a Virgo moon. You guys listening who have those, it's a gift and a curse, as is every placement. But you guys are meant to be healers, totally bridging heaven to earth. It's just you guys need a little more TLC when it comes to the grounding, breath work, and
Yes. Oh,
Mhm.
totally. Yeah, I know it's my Virgo moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think nerves have fully ever left me, but
Yeah.
I always recommend everybody who's wanting to do readings for others, it is really in the practice that you build the confidence because you're getting
Yeah.
feedback that it does make sense to them, or you're getting a sense of, okay, where did I misinterpret?
Yeah.
And having a bunch of practice before doing it professionally definitely helped me out a lot.
Yeah. And I love how simple your story is because a lot of people that get excited when they hear things like this and they'll get your book and say, I can't wait to talk to my cat. And
Yes.
it's so just random how it happens, how you realize, oh, the story I tell myself is that I have to light candles and chant and put on some frequency music, not realizing that you can literally just be working and look over and then connect and communicate like it's no other big deal. And your story of how you first discovered, oh, wow, my cat just communicated with me is so just effortless. You were running errands and happened to drive by your house and
Yeah.
saw a picture of an empty food bowl.
Yes. And so this is the same cat, Gilly, who I mentioned earlier,
Gilly.
who will take efforts to sneak into my dreams as well to give me messages. So she was just a baby at the time, and my husband and I we had only ever had cats that were grazers before that would only eat just a little bit and then
Yeah.
walk away from their food bowl and never fully empty it. And so Gilly was new to our home, and I was out doing errands and happened to be driving by my home. And in my mind's eye, like you said, I saw the picture of an empty food bowl and I heard the words, I'm hungry in my mind. And I thought to myself, I know for sure that food bowl was full before I left. But I thought, okay, it doesn't hurt to just go home and double check. And when I got home, I did indeed find an empty food bowl and a little Gilly sitting next to it, her tummy full and very expectantly waiting for more.
Oh my
So
gosh.
she's definitely been one who's been so instrumental in my own development. She helps in my classes. She will happily talk to all my students. And so I do credit a lot of my own sort of push in this direction and the way I developed to Gilly for sure.
Yeah. And then your first cat was Clara?
Yes, Clara the
That
cat.
story, Clara the cat. Was that in Norway or was that in Maryland?
So that would have been in Norway. She
Yeah.
was a Norwegian kitty.
And
Yeah.
and you adopted her and her original name from the shelter was Olga.
Yes. She
That story was so cool of how when she passed away, your Instagram got hacked.
I do find that a lot of the time, the animals that I feel close to who have passed away, they tend to use their names as a little sign from them, that to let me know that they're around and that they know I'm thinking about them. So Clara, like you said, before we got her, her name was Olga, and we changed it to Clara. And after she had passed, and this was maybe a couple of years actually after she had passed, I had been having a difficult week, and I had actually been thinking about her a lot. And later that week, like you said, somebody sort of randomly hacked into my Instagram account and changed my name to Olga, kind of very weirdly. Having had enough experience by that point, I knew that that was a little funny little hello from Clara for
Her.
sure.
Wow. It's just we're in a culture again of so many people who just think pets are pets. You get pet, you leave it outside, you leave it in the garage, you pour some kibble and
Mm,
leave, and that's just it. And but there's still, and it's a growing industry because you look at how much money people spend on their pets. It's clear that the relationship between humans and animals is definitely now we're realizing it's family. It is truly family. And oh my gosh, it's just when I read your book, my favorite example of how to use it for me personally was the separation anxiety chapter.
okay.
Because my dog Jeffrey is the most anxious little monkey, not saying he doesn't get it from me, but we've traveled a lot together. And so we've lived in many a different places. In fact, Airbnb is one of his favorite words. He likes it, he does. But the connection between us is so strong that when we separate, it is like the world ends and flips upside down, especially for him, but me too. I cannot go out for a dinner with my boyfriend without being like, I gotta get home. I gotta get home. I can only leave him with my mom, and she's the only person that he loves. And so you use the rubber band theory, and that changed my life to communicate to him like, hey, we're a pack, I'm just going to stretch out here, and then to tell him, hey, you can go in the bed and just belly up, man, and just spread your legs and sleep and enjoy it instead of having me kick you all night while I'm gone. I haven't tried it yet because, well, he works with me, he eats with me, he sleeps with me, he goes to the bathroom with
Yes.
me. We haven't done that yet, but I can't wait to try it. And so I imagine, is separation anxiety a pretty common thing you see?
Absolutely, especially with dogs who are such naturally, instinctually they very much think in this idea of packs, and once they're in a pack, we're gonna stay in the pack and we're never gonna be in different. Some are very, very scared even to be in a different room from their humans.
Yes.
And so um, it's tricky because unfortunately, animals have to also kind of get used to living in a human's world as well, where not every dog is allowed to go into every store with us,
Yeah.
or maybe we have a
Yeah.
doctor's appointment and it's just not possible. And so I think separation anxiety is one of those topics that I spend a lot of time on in my sessions. And a lot of my work is really kind of explaining to the animal how 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 um h- how how they can spend their energy a little bit better when it comes to also the separation anxiety. Because for some,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily anxiety. It's more that they just really want to be with their humans. And so they might sit and howl, calling for their humans to come back, thinking that maybe their human can hear them. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's actually just explaining to the dog, hey, your human actually, they can't actually hear you howl when you leave or when they leave. And actually, probably a better use of your energy would be just to spend that time just taking care of yourself, using that as your downtime, and then your humans are going to be back in just a little bit, and then you'll have all the energy you need to like play with them and spend time with them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you mentioned the rubber band concept that I spend a lot of time telling dogs in particular that since they are so pack-minded, explaining to them that, they are connected to their humans, the rest of their family, almost like a rubber band, and that sometimes that rubber band does expand out to where the people or animals are in different spaces, but they're still connected and they will always come back together again.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that can be a helpful
Yeah.
concept sometimes.
Oh, I can't wait to try it. I truly can. And before this, my mom, she's so good at communicating to Jeffrey. Like at first I laughed at her for doing it, but then I actually saw his behavior change. Like when we have a long day planned out of errands, leaving or bringing him with us, she'll say, Jeffrey, this morning we're going to wake up, we're going to eat our snacks, and then we're going to get in the car ride and we're going to go. And he is just doing the pug head tilt of like, okay, got it. All right. And then he's actually more calm and has less anxiety throughout the day. So at first I was laughing, like, yeah, you're grandpug. Okay. But no, she's like, no, he just wants you to tell him what's going on so he can be
Absolutely.
prepared. And so now
Absolutely.
I'm like, wait, you're actually right. This works. And for a lot of people who aren't as in tune with their energy for whatever reason, perhaps they're not surrounded by supportive partner or friends, family that just don't encourage it and foster it, but on their own, they're curious. I love your little box of what it was, internal senses exercises, where you list off like, think of the sound of crashing waves and think or imagine the taste of taking a bite of raw broccoli or the sensation of a super soft hot towel out of the dryer. And to just, when I was reading that on your thing, I'm like, wow, I could literally taste what you were describing. Like
Yeah,
if I think of a sour lemon and I start to salivate, or pickles, it's like, that is the sense. It's not woo woo crystal ball candles, whatever, sage. It's literally as easy as saying, hey, think of taking a bite into a sour, crunchy pickle. Now we've got thousands of people drooling listening to the podcast, right? Is that how you practice tapping into that sense?
yeah, especially yeah, if you're especially if you're completely new to any kind of intuitive work, it can be helpful to even just set off like 10 minutes to practice bringing to mind various sensations. So, like you were saying, a different tastes in your mouth. It's you are imagining the taste, but what you're also doing is you are strengthening that same sense that is then going to describe to you the energy that your animal communicates to you later on when you connect to your animal. So it's like you're strengthening those same pathways when you're imagining those various sensations, and then that helps strengthen exactly those psychic senses as well. So yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. And, you know, the last thing I want to ask you about, and it's probably the most important and impactful, is tending to sick, old, aging animals. I love that there's a big chunk of the later half of your book that talks about and helps walk people through the emotions that come up. Because, it's almost like when your animals get old and gray and you can feel their pain, but there's nothing you can do. It's just old age. You just got to comfort them as much as you can. It can be like a prelude to death and grieving. It's hard, right? Because in your mind's eye, they're still a kitten, they're still a puppy. And
It's
what is
tough.
your best advice?
I think when you have an animal that is aging or getting close to that window of time in which they might pass away, um, Using your own communication with them, so communicating with them, talking out loud to them. I always tell people, even when you're talking out loud to your animals, as humans, we tend to automatically send them the energy of what we're trying to communicate. So often they are getting the gist of a lot of it. And telling them how much you love them, they hear those things, you know. Also just spending a little bit more spending some time hanging out with them. Often animals that are in that phase of life, what matters most to them is really just spending a bit of time together, not necessarily having to go out on like big adventures all the time, though some do need that or want that. But just the laying together in the sun together, and trusting that your own communication, they are catching the messages behind those things. I also talk a little bit about preparing for an animal's passing. You know, if a person is considering using euthanasia to help their animal cross over. And by the way, when I've connected to animals that have passed by euthanasia, most of them very much view it as they were helped to cross over in this beautiful way. So nobody feels like their life was cut short by it. I know
Yeah.
that can be a bit of a worry for some people. But let's say that is something that you're preparing to do with your own animal companion, kind of making an event out of it. You can use animal communication to get a sense of, what things do they really want to make sure they get to do before they pass? Are there certain people or other animals they'd love to see again? And you can even get a sense from them, do they have any preferences for where they would like to pass? And maybe in their favorite spot in the home, or at their grandma's house, or and just taking the moment to kind of make this, even if it's a very difficult thing for us to do and obviously heartbreaking for everybody involved, to also think about it as like this beautiful sending off ceremony, and a chance to give them the things that they really love in life one last time before crossing over. And yeah, seeing it a little bit like a celebration of them.
What, my eyes aren't constipated anymore. They're watering.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and it'll never be easy. We humans are just, we're different than animals. We associate death as a death of our heart and
Of
awful and
course.
sad. But I love how you give the reminder. I need you to like tattooed on me to remember death is happy. Death is good. Death is a part of life, especially with animals. They don't view death the same way that we do they?
They no, absolutely not, and most of them are very aware that they'll still be around, that their souls will still be around and be able to connect to them. But often they're a little bit worried about their humans and how their humans are gonna do as well, because they can feel that grief, of course. And even, even if I logically know that, death isn't the end of my connection to my animals, of
Yeah.
course, I'm gonna be a complete mess
Yeah.
anytime I lose any of my animal companions as well. And I think it's important to know that it's okay to be both maybe happy for your animal as well as just a complete mess, for example, if you do like a little sending off ceremony for them, and if you want to try to lighten the energy a little bit, I encourage people to think back to maybe some of the fun memories you guys have had together, even like telling your animal what were some of your absolute favorite memories together, or funny memories. And it's okay if you're doing that through just tears as well, It's gonna absolutely be a full mix of emotions. Um, and that's really honestly the grieving process in a nutshell as well. It's a full range of mixed
Yeah.
emotions, and that's
Yeah.
all okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I got my eyes all, ooh, so emotional. Hold on. We got our Alexa thing going off right now.
Oh,
Hold on. Can you hear it?
I heard it.
Okay, I'm back. Ooh, that yeah. God, Taya, there's already a piece of me that's like, it's just my wound projecting, of course. But I'm like, once Jeffrey, my pug, is dead, like I'm never getting a dog again or a cat because the love is so big and so rich that the loss will feel just as big and painful. Forget it. I'm not putting myself through that. I know that's such a wounded
Yeah.
place to speak from, but I'm like, with my little soul dog here, I've already experienced the best of the best with connections. Why even bother trying again? So I've already like axed the idea of ever having an animal again, which is kind of sad. There's the Scorpio in me that's like loyalty. You know, in 2017, I had two cats, Brownie and Daisy. They were mother-daughter, bonded pair. She was her only kitten from a litter. Brownie was a very sickly cat that we found in our garage in New Hampshire, and I kept them and they were my soul babies. And oh, just such a lovely connection to these cats. And Brownie got diabetes. And so I had to
Mm,
tend to her care. You know, we took her to the vet when she got really sick once and they said, oh, her blood sugars are awful. Like this cat's going to die in 48 hours. But she told me, like, no, I'm not. And I,
uh,
even with the vet looking at me like with the euthanasia, like, come on, we got to do this. This is sad. I
yeah.
looked at them and said, I'm sorry, but no, I know you're probably upset and thinking these freaking people, but I went home and she just kept showing me cans of tuna, just cans of tuna, and I was like, okay. So I just fed her tuna and no grains, no kibble, and she
Yes.
lived for another 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
She eventually had a bad blood sugar crash and was hiding under the sink, and I just knew, like, yeah, this is it. This is it. And it
Hmm.
was an extremely windy day, and it was Earth Day. And I just knew I associate weather a lot with energy, and that's my woo woo. And so I was like, the winds of change are here. We've been putting this off for years. It's time. So, in my own human grief, I just grabbed her. I took her to the emergency vet and it was time. And I left our
Yeah.
back door open a little bit and her daughter Daisy got out. And so I lost both of them in one freaking day. And
I'm
I was by
sorry.
myself. And oh, that was my first time experiencing that level of grief with pets. And I tried to just go to work the next day, but I could not breathe. And whenever I worked at a supplement smoothie shop, whenever a customer would come in, I would just just choke up. Like everything reminded me of her. And so I remember having to tell my boss, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I lost my cat and I can't work. And they were understanding, but they looked at me like, it's your cat. Like,
Hmm.
sorry, but also no. But they were nice enough to say, okay, just take the rest of the day off. We'll see you tomorrow. But in my heart, I was like, I need a week. Like,
Yeah.
I need to like really I haven't even cleaned her toys up yet in her water bowl. And so I worry about the people who are losing pets and then they still have to tend to kids and partners and work. And we need, we get for like grief time off of work to grieve the loss of loved one humans. Don't you think we should get that for pets?
I do think that is something we should all work towards. I also think that even our losing humans, we don't really get a whole lot of time and space to grieve that either. You know, there's
Yeah.
only certain humans that qualify almost for us taking time off work and all that. And I think it's something that we should all like. It's important to talk more about this just with other people as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think people feel so silly grieving their own
Hmm.
animals as well,
Yeah.
and we don't talk about it enough with other people around us
Yeah.
too. And I but grief over pet loss is something that many people experience. You know, and, the more we can talk about it, I think the more normalized it will be and the easier it will be
Yeah.
to navigate that kind of thing.
And sometimes I swear, I mean, I've been lucky enough to not lose an immediate family member, human family member, my grandpa, but I imagine losing a pet is just excruciating because, with humans, we have pain, we have trauma, our love is conditional, whether we want to say it is or not. It's just human nature to have conditional love sometimes. But with animals, It's unconditional that you can abuse them. They'll come right back. You can yell at them and they'll just sit and wait.
Yeah,
Humans don't. And so when you lose that love, I think it brings up like a lot of childhood traumas. It brings up a lot of abandonment wounds, maybe. It's just a whole host of spectrum of emotions that come out.
absolutely. And I think guilt as well is one of those emotions that is
Yeah.
very common to come up when we're grieving the loss of anyone, really, but in particular with our animals, and it's one of those, even if you're not guilty of anything. Maybe
Yeah.
you gave your animal the absolute best life you could possibly do. You're still going to feel that feeling of guilt over things that weren't even in your control. And I think it's such especially for animals because we feel 100% responsible for them because we are in a sense as well as their human parents.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's almost a little bit cruel, you know?
Yes. Yes. And I love how you mentioned, because that's such a huge one, is guilt after euthanasia. When I did that,
Mm,
I was like, oh no, when we did it, she pulled her paw away, like, don't touch me. Why are you doing this? And I thought, what if she wasn't ready? When logically and looking at her, it's like her body was begging to just let go. And
mhm.
so I think you're right. A lot of people think, well, what if it wasn't time? What if I just killed the love of my life?
Absolutely. That's one of the hardest things for sure. Yeah, because we just sometimes we just don't know. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Have you had to euthanize a pet?
I personally have not had to make that decision, but
Yeah.
not yet. But Clara, the cat, who we talked about a little earlier, my mom did have to help her cross over by euthanasia. Uh,
My gosh. It's a very, I love it. I hate it, but I love it because it's such a painful heart out of body experience. But then when you're in it, it's truly the most rarest, rawest form of love you can ever experience. Death can be so beautiful in that way. I loved holding. I actually asked, like, can I hold Brownie while you do it?
yeah,
And I did. And it sounds morbid, but as I held her and felt her go stiff, go cold, it was just this final blanket of love that felt like her body taking a big sigh of relief. And I felt so powerful. And like, that's the most, even with humans, the biggest act of unconditional love is letting someone go. I really think so.
absolutely. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, being present at somebody's passing is such a special honor in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
to be there in those moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder if it is that the Scorpio in you that
I
because I
like,
know
yes. It is. And everyone is just like, that is so morbid. I'm like, no, it was beautiful. And with Jeffrey, I will be laying with him on the ground.
yes,
I would have it no other way, no other way. And I know not everybody feels that way. There's a lot of people. And if everyone listening, if you're like, Steph, you're freaking nuts. There's a lot of people who can't be in the room, who cannot handle it because the emotions and then the
absolutely.
morbidness of death. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not all Scorpio.
Right. Yeah.
We're not, but this was a huge reason why, and it was the perfect ending to your book, because your book just took me through the spectrum of emotions of like, oh, I can't wait to try this. Oh, this is really going to improve my relationship with my dog. And then at the end, how you beautifully wrap it up with how to heal from the grief of losing this incredible soulmate in a furry
Hmm.
body. It's
Hmm.
just, it's perfect. And then, of course, you have the exercise of making boundaries, which is very beautiful. It's, your book is just so well rounded and an
Thank you.
essential part of what we need in the world of spirituality and the world of having a relationship with our pets that's growing by the day. I see so many people who are coming out as saying, like, oh, I feel the same way about my animal, about my dog, my cat. And I'm like, oh, it's not just like a hypersensitive me. Everyone else feels this way. And it's like, oh, yeah. I follow a lot of pet loss psychologists on Instagram, and to have a community on there of like, oh, I'm not the only one that's grieving for years over my dead cat. Okay. Got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a process.
So, where can people find your book? Is it out? Where can they get it?
So it will be. fully out July 11th. And
Yes.
but it's available for pre-order, and you can find it on Amazon as well as Barnes and Noble and potentially local bookstores around you as well. And if anybody wants, they can also find a link to it on my website as well.
And where can they find you on socials? Instagram, Facebook, TikTok? What do you
They
got?
can they can find me right now on Instagram mainly, as well as Facebook, but I'm mostly active on Instagram, and my handle is at transcending Thea. So Thea is spelled Thea, and they can find me there.
Yes. And guys, it's not at Transcending Olga, it's Taya.
Yes.
Don't believe
Yes.
in the hackers. Your name is so cool. Thea Strom. It's just amazing. I love it.
Thank
Is
you.
that your maiden name or your married name?
No, maiden name. Yeah.
It's so
It's similar
beautiful.
to Powers because Strom is it's actually Strøm in Norwegian, and it means current or power, electricity, you know.
Amazing. I took an ancestry test. I do have a lot of Norwegian and Swedish.
Oh, very
So
nice.
cool.
You
Right.
should go.
Well, oh, it's on my list to go back to where the ancestors are from. It'll be
Yep.
amazing. Amazing. Well, Taya, thank you so much for your time, for sharing, and for having the self discipline, and for telling your Virgo moon to shut it, and creating such an incredible book. I've worked with some really cool authors of many different types of things, and you can tell which ones are going to get very well used. And I have a feeling this book of yours is going to be heavily used in my office and on the coffee table by many people. Like, wait, let me read that. So, thank you from all of us for working hard and pushing past any self limiting beliefs to create this book and put it out there. I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it and begin your journey of connecting with both your pets, but also spirit guides and nature as a whole, which can
Yes.
really help elevate this whole world. So, Taya, thank you for coming on Lightworkers Lounge.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It's been a real pleasure.